Have you ever heard of a funeral home so sinister that it could double as the plot of a true crime documentary? Today, I'm going to tell you about Sunset Mesa Funeral Directors in Montrose, Colorado, a business that promised grieving families comfort, but instead committed crimes that are almost too horrifying to believe. Along with that, today Brittany is going to be discussing the return to nature funeral home scandal, crimes, and so much more. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the And Also podcast. I'm your host, Madison, and today we'll be joined by Brittany Demarco-Furman for another episode all about the funeral world. So in today's episode, we're going to be sharing with you some true crime cases that have unfolded over the last few years in the funeral industry, the death industry. And we'll also be talking about our biggest fears as funeral directors. We're going to be talking about our fears from messing up public speaking, dropping caskets, and things that go on in the morgue that we're literally so scared of. So if you want to hear more about these true crime stories in the funeral world and our fears as funeral directors, just keep listening. And without further ado, let's bring Brittany in and get our interviews started. Okay.
Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We're here in 2025.
Yeah, it's a new beginnings. I like to do the whole manifestations and sage the house kind of stuff. So yes. I'm ready.
Intentions set.
I feel like we have so much more to talk about, and I don't think we're going to fit it all in this year, but we surely can try.
We will try our very best. First of all, today's episode, we're going to take you guys on a wild story time.
Yeah, it might be a little word vomity, but at the same time,
we're tired.
We're like, yeah, it's a lot of stuff. We just want to kind of start off just, kind of spilling the tea more in the profession, but also like what we're scared of and like what we worry about so families don't worry.
Right.
And also maybe even get into like when the funeral director is so worrisome or something's wrong and they really mess up the trade and make us all look bad.
Clock it. There's a couple crazy stories.
Oh, from
Colorado. Which I feel like we have dragged Colorado in the past, respectfully, rightfully so. So let's talk fears as a funeral director. Mm-hmm. I know as someone who's like going into the profession who's not quite there yet, some things that I always think about that I'm like, I'm so afraid that I'm going to do this, or I'm so afraid this is going to happen. So yeah, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. There's a lot of moving parts.
You see me. We were on our way to the place of worship today, and I forgot the table, so I had to go back. So
literally,
it's always, and every time it's different. So how about tell me what's on your mind?
I'm so afraid of leading a procession. I feel like I'm so scared of that. As you know, I forget how to drive when I'm nervous.
I don't think anybody knows how to drive that hearse, just in New York. Defense.
Oh my God, I literally almost took it through your house. Like,
you did. For those listening, the shifter is very special on our Cadillac hearse. So you're not alone, okay?
I don't know. I feel like I don't trust myself. I feel like I'm just going to like slam on the gas for some reason.
Definitely actually driving the procession, it takes a lot of guts. First off, like you need to feel like you are in control of the road. You need to have the confidence. Yeah. In a way, just make yourself known. So if you're like an introvert, you're not leading a procession.
I also feel like this is not the profession for introverts.
No, definitely not. That's for sure. Sorry, introverts, but hey, if you want to be down in the morgue, that's maybe
right. That could be your thing,
right?
Yeah.
But anyway, no, you just don't jump in the front of the car and know how to like lead a 20-car procession, and also feel like brave enough to like stopping traffic, making noise
while you're driving, while you're making sure you have everyone, while you're making sure like everything's good.
Well, look at me now. Like at first, like when I was in your place, I was nervous, but now I'm like yapping and spilling the tea with you.
Seriously,
while I'm
we're like,
doing
oh my God.
siren, snapping my fingers at people, looking people in the eye.
You're like, are you really gonna go?
It does take time, That's something that you're gonna grow over time, being confident. It's a good adrenaline. So I'll give you a little like thing about that. I love leading a procession.
You're so good at it.
Because you feel like, like, I don't know, you feel like you have purpose, like they're in your care and something. Yeah. And you also stop because those who are not texting and driving, you see them and they like, whether it's a veteran and they see the flags, they put their hand on their hearts, or people who are veterans take their hats off, salute. You could just see the faces change and you just feel like, wow, like I'm leading something bigger than like you just driving. As you can see, I like leading there, and then I have to be like the princess and somebody has to drive me back.
You're like, who's driving?
All my energy was invested in that
It's
ride.
a lot. It's a lot. And then you have the people who like cut in front of you, flip you off, and then they don't realize, like, I don't know what doesn't click. They don't see like the lights and the
and like people are just in a rush, and like hopefully that we're raising the next generation for a sign of respect to pull over, but at least just don't cut in. And
it's so rude.
And also besides having some decency to do that, also realize how important this moment is. And also maybe every time you see a procession go by, maybe your mortality of yourself, sets in a bit.
It's like a reality check. Like, whoa, one day that's going to be me.
Yeah. And you
so
want
I
somebody
should be respectful. I actually get asked this a lot more than I would think. If you see a procession coming your way, what do you do?
I mean, you're supposed to yield no matter what. If it's like, it seems, there's lights and sirens. We have the right of the way in New York, but we have to stop at red lights. So that's the thing. If you see a procession coming through, pay respect. But if it is a longer procession, they all can't get through the light, they have to stop.
Right.
I have led a procession. Right past the cemetery where I knew the caretaker. I was pretty early in my career.
Oh my God.
And they're like waving to me, and I don't know, I think I like freaked out, and like I feel like I had a little bit more pressure on this one because I knew people from high school and this is the first time I was licensed. So I really think I was like trying to like, I got this. Like, right. I know, like, you're being judged for your profession. And I just like remember like kind of like getting in my own mind, and I was talking to somebody in the car and I just went right by it. So luckily I like have a sirens, I have everything. I took out the actual speaker thing now because you don't know, I haven't had to do this, it's only in emergencies. It has a speaker system where you could start talking like over on a siren. So I'm like, please stop, I'm stopping traffic coming in. I made a legit like
massive U-turn.
I got everybody to just stop, and then I stopped the traffic behind us, and I got everybody to just do an illegal half turn.
Oh my God.
I did it, and everything like worked out good because I made sure like I got the sirens, the lights, because I was like, I'm not taking this family, I'm not gonna be late for our burial, F this. So
yeah, that's
I just
a lot.
like it just shows we're only human and stuff. And
I feel like that's something a lot of people, especially people in school, don't realize is it's a job where like etiquette and professionalism is like number
because they expect
one.
Everything to go right.
Yes. It feels like you cannot make a mistake. It feels like you're on stage, whether it's the way that you're dressed, the way that you make eye contact with people, the way that you speak, like all of it is so important, and people do notice. And I think that's something people are not ready for, and especially now, like we're not taught necessarily like a lot of etiquette things.
No, and it's a proper way. Like we're always going to be like professional.
Yes.
No matter what. Even though I've seen like a lot of like new age funeral homes that they're in the office. They can be like behind the scenes, but then when you're going on a funeral, you're dressing up. This is somebody who passed away, and unless the family suggested you wear something different,
right?
That's a different term.
Something else I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of public speaking at all, but I do. I am afraid of a little word fumble.
I know what you're talking about.
This is a leading question. Why don't you share?
I used to be so nervous of public speaking. Like I would like break up in hives and like
really
sweat. Like So I really came like a far way. And I don't know, something about finding the strength to speak for those who can't. It's just, I don't know. I find it in like honoring them, but also be like, I got you. And like, I'm going to try to like make this like peaceful and also make sure that we talk about you and nothing else in this moment. However, even though you find the strength to do that, you're only human too. And also the pressure sometimes and your brain's somewhere else, you might go. Honestly, as a funeral director, no one's going to know what you're saying. It's going to be just like how you made them feel at the end of the day.
That's a really good point.
So yeah, long story short, because I'll be honest.
Yo, this is so funny.
She's never been to the National Cemetery before. We also have another attendant with us who's never been to the National Cemetery before. So I'm giving them a little tour. I was like, oh, and this is like, oh, all the graves over here. I'm like, oh, there. And there's Gerald B.H. Solomon. There's the grave there of the man who started the cemetery. And I go, this name always reminds me of Jared Butler, the hot actor from 300. So we get to the cemetery, committal shelter, and the military is doing their service. It's beautiful, honorable, perfect, right? And like I come up to speak to everybody, and I just want to acknowledge the beautiful day, the peaceful surroundings, the military, and to welcome everybody to Gerard Butler Cemetery. She's over there in the corner. I'm like about to burst out. It feels like the longest pause ever. And I just see her. She has like her like gothic sunglasses, and she just looks like I don't know you.
I'm like, I'm gonna die laughing.
I'm so happy like you had those on because
we would have.
It would have not been good because
you could hear a pin drop in this room. Like it was so.
My lips were like
they were quivering. I feel like there's the general fear of like dropping something that should not be dropped, or something I do think about a lot is when we're being like pallbearers or just like, wheeling the casket down the aisle. I'm like, what if I'm pushing too hard and it just slides off? I always am so afraid that like I'm gonna drop something, I'm gonna push something, Are
you trying to call me out on all my stuff?
Do you do that? Have you done that?
No, of course. I think every funeral director freaks out. You see me when I do the leveling of the casket.
I'm so glad you actually do that.
And then I always do like a little test too.
I'm so glad you do that because I'm so scared.
Yeah, like I've seen YouTube. Like I ain't gonna be messing up any day just to look
even
cool.
Imagine.
No, I move aside. Let's check again. And like we're taking care of somebody's loved one. That's the least you could do is like double check. You've seen the TikToks, right?
Yeah, there was one like a few months ago where didn't the casket fall out of the hearse? Like that is because they didn't put the stopper on there and it just went whoop. So scary.
I can't believe like that these things happen too.
It's like you check yourself like 20 times just to make sure.
Oh yeah, I'm always looking. I'm always looking. I had at the church that we go to often.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's not the casket. It's the church truck.
Yeah.
So it's the thing that the wheels that we have the casket on. This thing gets locked up and we're starting to walk down the aisle of church. Just me and the other attendant. He's pushing and then first I just stop because I'm like, the wheel isn't turning.
It's like
so
stuck,
it's locked. The thing is locked. But he keeps pushing. The casket starts coming off the church truck. I literally, with all my life, was holding the casket up, trying to still sing like Ave Maria in the processional. And I'm just looking at him like
slow it down.
We're literally talking with our eyes, and he's like, oh, because the pall's on there, so he can't see that the casket's starting to fall off the church truck. So luckily, he saved the day. We were so embarrassed because you can kind of notice a little like hiccup on
there's something going on. Yeah.
That I was like, I'm not getting down and fixing this brake in front of. So I literally I was kicking the pedal and literally lifting the casket down the middle of the aisle. And then once we got back there and then the camera started turning away from the casket, I went and unlocked it and made it so we didn't have that problem again. But no, I mean,
you get like super strength. You know what I mean? Like if this
casket
falls or I'm manning this myself, you're manning it yourself.
I always say like I'm not ever letting somebody fall in a grave on my watch. Like I'll literally like Superman and go in for it.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere.
Like,
it's no.
Yeah. And isn't it so scary? Like even though how many times you tell people to watch their step, like that's like,
seriously.
Have we invented anything better than that green like throw rug? Like that thing's slippery. It is. And put some like moisture on it. It's a slip and slide.
Awful. I mean, I almost fell up the hill at the cemetery last week. Like, there has to be a better way.
What other questions are you scared of?
I feel like those are some of my main fears of like the stuff upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah.
Then there's downstairs, which I feel like could be a whole other episode in itself. I mean, I'm basically scared of like everything because I'm so scared of messing up. I'm so scared of just not knowing. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to embalming, it feels like you just have to get it right and you can't mess up.
Yeah.
And that's such a scary thing when an entire family.
Well, there's makeup. Like, you can always mess up.
That's so true. That's
so for
true.
anything.
Yes. A little foundation never hurt. But yeah, it feels like a lot of pressure. And I think the stuff upstairs is like all stuff I can figure out very easily. It's more of like basic like human skills. Mm-hmm. But then the embalming, I'm just like, there's so
I mean, it still scares me. That's why I don't embalm.
Like, no, thank you.
And you want to know my fear is? You'll learn about this, but obviously, like, you have to aspirate the body afterwards. You know, you have the fluid, the embalming fluid, penetrate the body, and you release all the blood. Yeah. Getting graphic here, but yeah, that's the organic material. It has to go bye-bye. So you gotta cleanse the circulatory system, and then you put in the fluid. But then afterwards, you have to, you know, puncture all the organs and suck out the blood.
That's what I'm scared of.
And that's my biggest fear. Like,
Same.
I think I'm gonna puncture through a body, or I think when you're like sucking stuff out, that the hose is gonna detach from the trocar and it's gonna explode all over me. So that's what
you wear your PPE.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of too. All the stuff I've read and looked into, it's like the actual just like general removing the blood, putting in the embalming fluid is like okay, but then to get into each organ and like you should do it in a certain order and like
it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot. And like at 4 a.m. trying to open the body and finding the carotid artery, it's just like
digging around
daunting.
exhausted.
But however, I mean, when I was in school, I did enjoy it. So like you might be like, no, this is like my thing. And I know it sounds so weird doing, but you're making somebody so beautiful and preserving them for that final goodbye. And I mean, nobody dies pretty. Maybe Rose Dawson, okay? All right? But that is not everybody.
Right.
Like, like those final moments, you know, when somebody's wither away, they don't look the same. And, you know, that was your final memory. So our job is to kind of make sure that you can find that peace and knowing that they look more like themselves. So
yeah, it's actually really, it's like unreal to me how different just like a dead body looks,
you know,
straight from the source.
I know. And
versus embalmed.
And it's so like, it makes you feel so good too.
Yeah.
Knowing like when you take them into your care and then what you could do for the family as a final goodbye. So there's so much power behind it, but not a lot of people know how much work goes into it behind the scenes.
Like, it's down to like, there's so much. It's not just like they show up in the casket looking great. It's the lighting, it's the makeup, it's the embalming, it's the picking dressing. Up the person, dressing them.
Like honestly, like if like
hair.
Yeah, and the hair is so big because if their hair does not like follow what the guidelines are with the photo of them that you gave them,
I could throw off the whole thing.
You'd be like, what? Like, what's going on? Yeah. She had bangs. You guys didn't even cut her bangs, or she didn't part her hair to the left. It was the right. This looks so bizarre. Like it's very like
it's seriously the smallest details. Yeah. Like the way you do somebody's eyebrows, like, you know, it's so personal, and it's someone you didn't know. So you're just going off of pictures and stories, just trying to make sure you get it right.
That's Mike and Alicia there.
Seriously.
Hats off. A little tap for me with cosmetics.
Right? Like, I'm the makeup fairy. Do you have any fears that you still think about on the daily?
Besides the trocar thing?
Is that literally the reason why you don't embalm?
100%. That's like, I don't know. It's just...
Does it gross you out, that part? Or is it just that you're afraid of like...
I feel like I'm hurting them.
Okay. I'm so glad you said that, because that's... Even the other day when you were taking that woman's ring off, I was like, oh,
I got it off.
She's just a little lady. Like, I'm so afraid it's gonna hurt. Like,
oh, no.
And I think you like get over that, I'm sure. But like, I am so afraid that I'm actually hurting somebody.
Oh, I think the same thing. But I mean, I use that trick on my own hands too.
Seriously. So. And I also like, I feel like I'm gonna break them.
I know.
Like, they feel so much more fragile than they probably really are. And I think like once you do it a lot more, like I will get the feel for like what is
Yeah,
too much.
Especially like when I became licensed, I was helping with the dressing and casketing. And then 2020 came, with COVID, I got pregnant, so I was really not doing. So really, like I've only been like really involved in dressing and casketing for like the last 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous in the beginning. You know, it's a lot of like, you want to understand like positioning and that, like every little detail counts.
Yeah.
But you really do like grow over time and like learn. Because I remember I could never get these kind of jackets over a guy's. And I remember them were like, Brittany, just like do it. I'm like, I feel like I'm hurting them.
That's what I'm so scared of.
But like you find ways. And like anything, you learn. You learn how to do it. And you do it in like a very professional and sensitive manner. But we also have a job to do. And like it's literally moving dead weight. It's a lot, but we can do it. And as little people, like we find our little tricks. But hey, you know, there's nothing wrong with asking somebody to help you dress a body.
Yeah.
That's why we have a good staff. So once you're allowed in the morgue, we'll get you over there helping me out. So you want to know one thing that I'm not afraid of?
Yeah.
Ever getting arrested for keeping 120 corpses?
Clock it.
Like, how? What are these people?
And then I was going to say, how could you even get your license? Well, you don't. Colorado. Yeah, so let's talk about it. And I'm sure a lot of people who consume content around funerals, funeral directing, have probably heard of this case. It's the Return to Nature funeral home.
Were they trying to like compose? Like that's what I'm just like so confused.
That's the thing, is they were not. From what I know of the story, they were telling families that they were cremating their loved ones. They were giving the cremains back to the families. And one day, one of the families was like, let me look at these ashes. It was not ashes. It was like anything but ashes. I think they were using like cement powder and just like general dust and calling it cremains, hoping that no one would ever fact check it. And then they would be like, oh, where's my loved one then? If this is not their actual cremated remains, where are they? Lo and behold, they were storing tons and tons and tons of bodies in the funeral home. You know, people who lived nearby could smell it.
I saw that the medical examiner got a rash from being
a rash. Like, it's so dangerous.
I mean, did they like lose their crematorium operating like?
So they didn't have one on the premise. From what I understand, what wound up happening is it was a money issue. Mm-hmm. And they were using money from funerals for other things.
Oh, I saw the liposuction.
Yeah, seriously. Like plastic surgery, shopping sprees. Like the families would pay them. They would spend the money before they could pay out the crematory, or they could, you know, purchase the urns, whatever they needed to use that money for. It was already gone. This just slowly started piling up until you have over 100 bodies in the funeral home. And to this day, there have been bodies that still have not been found. Like, people still don't know where their loved ones are. They don't know if they were cremated, if they were buried, if they're just rotting somewhere. And I seriously don't know what their plan was. It would be different if they had their own crematory on the premise, because they could just cremate the bodies. But you can't just show up to a crematory with 100-something bodies and be like, can we do this? Obviously, the crematory is going to be like, what, how, and why are all of them already like decomposing?
That's so sad. So don't go to that funeral home, whatever you do.
It's so scary.
Are they still open?
I don't think so. I want to look, because their Instagram hasn't been active for a few years.
Because that's how people find them. Closed.
Permanently? The location has closed, yeah. Oh, they actually demolished it.
I would.
Or they're planning on demolishing it. It's actually 200 bodies.
That's disgusting.
200 bodies.
Well, something on a lower scale did happen in Johnstown.
I heard about this, but what happened?
The same thing as a very lower number.
Right, like less bodies.
It's a really sick and sad scenario.
I can't understand how, like, does no one that is working there?
The professional funeral directors and the homes that still have their license, because I guess what he did was lose his license and was still operating. So actually, newsflash, make sure that the funeral home that you work with has their license and they are operating. So you can check that out on the New York State Funeral Directors Association website.
So if you were working there and something like that happened, would you also lose your license just by...
No. But hopefully, I guess it's another good thing. Little, like, residents looking for a residency check.
Because I cannot imagine, like, working somewhere and then just seeing bodies, like, piling up.
I feel like this is really, really rare, though. Like, I think he did so little calls that nobody flagged him. Because I just can't imagine anything else, you know?
Because I imagine that at
like
Glenville,
people having obituaries and stuff in the paper, like, you know, somebody would be like, oh, well, he's not operating, but... Yeah.
So I imagine that at Glenville, like, we have so many cases, so many calls, so many people in and out. I can't imagine, like, going downstairs and seeing 36 people.
Or, like, the smell enough.
The smell. And, like, I don't understand, like, at what point?
I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So when that happened, all the respectful funeral directors, they were like, we have to get our license checked more and more. And it's now a regulation. So making sure our license and our registration numbers and everything matches up. So yeah.
And making sure everyone that's working for you is legitimately licensed, which in Colorado, you don't need a license. So there's a lot of, like, funeral related crime in Colorado because, like, I could just walk in and be like, I want to be a funeral director, so I'm going to be a funeral director today, and just start working with dead bodies. And, like, it's scary to think about.
Us looking at a Google search, it's mostly out that way.
Yep. Because of the story that I have, there could be a whole true crime documentary about this. Like, it's so diabolical. So there's a funeral home in Montrose, Colorado. Shocker. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So in 2016, the funeral home basically, it was a girl and her mom that ran it. And they offered cremation, like, on site. So they weren't just running a funeral home. She was running a body broker operation out of the same building. So without consent, her and her mother were dissecting bodies, selling body parts to medical researchers and companies around the world. Families were told that their loved ones had been cremated on site, but in many cases, the ashes they received did not even belong to their relatives. So in 2018, one family kind of busted the whole operation. So investigators figured out that the owners of the funeral home had forged donor consent forms, sold entire bodies for profit, and mishandled remains in a way that was sickening, to be honest. Like, there were ashes mixed with concrete. Yeah, so after a long investigation, they were charged with mail fraud and illegally transporting hazardous materials. The daughter was sentenced to 20 years and the mother received 15 years. How does something like this happen? Like,
well, they're bad people. They're bad people.
And they don't need to be licensed.
Yeah.
There is still crime within places who have licenses. Like, I get that. But I think when you don't need a license, you don't have to go through all the school. You're more likely to not be as...
They're not going to be regulated, so...
Yeah,
definitely.
Isn't that crazy?
Definitely not a fan of Colorado.
After so much crime, when is the state going to be like, maybe we should follow suit with other states? And
should we lobby?
Honestly, yes. Sign the petition.
I mean, we're from New York, just, like, talking shit about you and, like,
seriously,
you know,
but, like, selling bodies.
No.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. You have to be a different level of, like, money hungry. My question is, how do people know when they're looking for a funeral home? Like, what things would you recommend people look for when picking? Like, I know you mentioned make sure that it's actually a licensed funeral home. Make sure the people you're working with are licensed. But what are some, like, other things that you could probably tell right off the bat? Like, oh, this is a red flag, or maybe I should shop around a little bit more.
So, I mean, first off, I think a funeral home should have a website that, you know, you'd be able to look through. Even though there's some, I mean, there are some botched up websites out there that I don't know if they're, like, AI generated, and then maybe it's a fake, like, you know, maybe a front funeral home in Colorado. So, I mean, so... But I think having a website and making sure that I like to see the staff, like about us staff, and also big is reviews online. Reviews are huge, you know, having people make their customer testimonial. It's okay if maybe a funeral home has only like 12 5-stars. You know, I understand how hard it is to get those stars as a funeral home because some people aren't actively trying. When it comes to other aspects, I really believe that just asking around is so important because your closest friend who maybe just went through that, ask them honestly about their funeral experience. You know, did they like their funeral home? I know a lot of people want to stay nearby, like their local funeral home. It's good to put in the locality of it. So if it's close to you but really far to the cemetery, maybe you can get a funeral home that's closer to the cemetery. So it's an easy medium ground. I certainly would want you to do your research beforehand, but then also when you call, you will know in your gut if this is the funeral home for you.
Yes, I was going to say like trust
everything.
Trust yourself. If you see something or hear something that doesn't feel comfortable or right or just makes you like scratch your head, trust it. And
definitely. Like you want the person to not be quick with you, compassionate, and they need to be transparent too. And then also make sure that, you know, you can confront them with money. Like, how much is this going to cost? Like, don't have a funeral home that's going to be like secretive. Like, oh, it's $21.95 starting out. Okay, but then what does that?
But how much am I paying?
Yeah.
Like, let's be real.
Let's give them the real number. If it's like a memorial service, you're right around $5,000. So you certainly don't want to be like, well, our basic arrangement fee is $12.95, and then we get to $5,000 somewhere. No, you want a company that's gonna like be open and honest with you if you ask that question direct. So yeah, we don't require any payment up front. We want signatures, and then we have a payment contract that requires a social security number and things like that nature. But we want to just be there to help them, and we don't want them to like take out their checkbook and
let's get through the service.
And there's so many families that are like, no, I want to take care of it now. I'm like, okay, if you want to, but I'm no rush, like, you know, and my accounting is weeks behind too. But it's good to just be able to be open and honest with the family when they ask the questions. The death industry is so stagnant, and it's finally starting to kind of like take off in new age ways. Aquamation. Here we come, baby.
Yes.
Mermaid power.
Well,
this was fun.
This was a good one.
Word vomit. I think we talked a lot. I'm ready for a nap. How about
you? Seriously, it's been a long morning. All right, so thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll be I feel like we'll do obituaries next.
Okay,
sounds
good.
That would be the vibe.
I'm gonna go write my obituary.
Same. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of And Also. If you're listening on audio platforms, be sure to download the episode, rate it 5 stars, send it to a friend. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, give it a like, and definitely leave a comment below, letting us know your thoughts on all of the bizarre stuff we talked about. Once again, thank you guys so much for being here, for tuning in, and for allowing this platform to grow, to share these amazing stories. And I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.